and we'll get into it. If you all don't mind, if you're not speaking or answering or asking a question, if you would go on mute, that helps us all, sort of communicate better. Appreciate that. Many of you have been here before, so I'll save you a little bit of time on the spiel. But we do have a chat, the Microsoft Teams chat for this, where the way we've been doing these meetings is some of you, certainly can chime in verbally and ask questions. You can put questions in the chat. Whenever there's, quiet airspace, we'll fill it with tips and tricks as best we can. There's a lot of folks that went into, being here for these sessions. All of your time is valuable, so we try to give you the most valuable information. Obviously, you've heard from Eileen Lehman. She's been fantastic on our change management side and helping us to communicate. And then I think we have Jen Keeney here. The list of attendees is so long. Jen is such a great resource as well. That's been on the enterprise project. It's been at Ohio State for a number of years that have really helped, spearhead some of the reporting and answering questions. So Jen will be prominent today. Christina Cardenas and Andy Pope will be joining shortly. They'll help answer any of your payroll related detailed questions around reporting and process. They've been fantastic the last few days. And then of course, Lisa Plaga is here from the controller's office to help us with any questions that may arise around, policy or guidelines around expectations for close. But that's pretty much the backdrop of it. And we just try to spend a lot of time demoing in Workday. I'm going to begin sharing my screen here in a test environment so we can kind of just show you firsthand and answer your questions real time that you may have. I think the hottest topics for us the last couple of days have been around, how do we, I used to report on it this way using a 91 or a 90 or a 61 or an HRB 140. How do I do it today? So, some of the repeat conversations about how to do that, how to drill into data, how to update your views. So if you've been in the sessions on Tuesday, Wednesday, and we didn't get to your question, we could do that today. But again, the chat is a great way, and we just kind of go question by question and try to plow through it. So I think we do have one question so far I see from this morning. Let's see if I can get to it here. Is there a report available that will allow me to see balances and work tags, including spend categories for purchase orders according to the cost center? So you're specifically looking at purchase orders. Mostly my answer is there's multiple ways to do it. Jen, you may have already typed a response.
I talked about more so on the spend category side with the spend category commodity code details report. I have found that is pretty useful.
Yep. Question is from Lisa Selfinger. For purchase orders according to the cost center. So again, what I was saying is there's usually a couple different ways to look at information, and our sort of pillar reports that we lean heavily on that we've been talking about, we're hoping that people are finding of value, are the sources and uses reports, of course, the general fund balance report, the general ledger balance report, and the fine journal lines OSU report are some of our go-to where you can begin as an entry point into those reports. And then there are ways to filter your data. If you want to look at only a specific cost center, if you want to look at only purchase orders, if you want to look at only journals created by your team, there are ways to filter on that data. So with that being said, I'm going to start with fine journal lines, unless there's a more specific question. And then I'll jump over to Eric's question. So the fine journal lines OSU is going to be your most detailed, kind of granular level report that you can get to, giving you individual transaction journal lines from transactions. So again, I've been using this a lot the last few days. Some of you are probably hearing the same kind of things over and over again. So hopefully it's helping to reinforce. What I'm going to pull here is for January. And if back to Lisa's question, if you wanted to pull for a specific cost center and see activity and the work tags associated with it, including spend categories for purchase orders, you can definitely do that. For now, just unless you have a cost center, Lisa, you'd like me to use, I can pivot to that. But for now, I'm just going to go ahead and put a cost center hierarchy. And journal sources is an area where you'll get more familiar. There are obviously quite a few of them, but once you learn what they each mean, this will be helpful. Just scrolling down here till I get to purchase order as a journal source. So this is one way to do it. If you want to look from the accounting and journal line side, you could run a report for all of my entries posting in January for purchase orders to the optometry cost center hierarchy 6. Don't know exactly what I'm going to get here, but I'm going to run it and just give you an idea for an option that might be helpful. So again, the reason I like this report is because it's accounting kind of formatted and thought through. So there's a lot of detail here. There's 397 lines, and you can see. Again, I've filtered. If you ever want to see what you've filtered on, is you use the detail expansion button to remind you you're looking at purchase orders for January within all of optometry CCH6. You might have a specific cost center or cost centers that you want to look at. That's fine. And you'll see this is the layout of this report has all of the work tags in one column, which sometimes is user-friendly, sometimes maybe not. All of the work tags have their own column with IDs as well. So if you wanted to see purchase order traffic coming in certain spend categories, you'd be able to see that here. I've think I've updated my view in my presentation yesterday, where I've actually taken out and unchecked, unselected some of these fields just to reduce the number of columns. But if you wanted to bring back in for this purpose, the spend category description, I'll go ahead and apply my changes on that preferences section. And now I'll go back over and you can then see, maybe this is something that would be helpful. You can then filter on or kind of analyze purchase orders posting by individual spend categories, and you can single or multi-select to sort of narrow down on your analysis. Thank you, Jen. Good question from Judith there about the journal sources. Quick reference guide was provided by Jen. So if we have time, we can kind of talk through more and more of what each journal source means. Let's see, you gave me a cost center. Thank you. Sorry, I was rambling on there. But yeah, I don't think I need to necessarily repeat that. But if you go into that cost center CC11.
Hey, Ella.
449.
HR
you can filter instead of a cost center hierarchy. You could just look at a single cost center. And if you ran it for your entire CCH6, you would also be able to filter just by individual cost center by selecting the value, the filtering here as well. Just gonna go back up. Hopefully that was some good breadcrumbs for you, Lisa. Before I go into the next question, there's also probably reporting around finding purchase orders that I'm not as, we don't highlight in these types of meetings since these are finance specific, but you can do searches for purchase orders. A lot of the report naming in Workday is meant to be intuitive. Like, what is it that you want to find? So I found a report that says find purchase orders. It doesn't necessarily have the work tag breakout. Oh, it does. I'm sorry. So you could do the same thing here and enter your cost center, Lisa, and then you'd be able to find the details of those purchase orders using the find purchase order report. Follow-up question, can it be cleanly exported to share with others without having them run the report? Yes, it can be. On pretty much every report, there is, I'm going to go back to my find journal lines, there's a little Excel icon that allows you, it's, oops, too far. There's a small Excel icon up here that allows you to export to Excel, and it's going to be presented as shown on the screen, and then that can be shared with others. I'm going to go back up to make sure I'm catching all the questions. Eric, I think you were the next question here. How can we see GL balance details for AR, account balances, cash clearing, and cash balances? So that takes us back to, there's again, multiple ways. The way that we talk a lot about it is the general ledger balance report. So general ledger balance report is going to spit out to you sort of like a trial balance, where you can enter your criteria here. I'm going to enter as of FY 2021 January. Different ways to narrow the results. If we want to narrow down for student life, a lot of these demos come down to what I'm always going to say, like, what is there a balancing unit or cost center that you'd like me to look at and present? If you don't give me one, that's totally fine. I'm just going to pretend to use one that I think might be applicable to you. You can also enter specific ledger accounts, Eric. So if you're looking for cash clearing, I just type in some words and I find cash clearing. If you're looking for something accounts receivable, you can type that in. If you have, you'll begin to build more familiarity with the actual ledger account numbers and names. Not knowing exactly what accounts that you're focused on, I'm just going to select a couple for demonstration purposes. So now I'm filtered on 3 accounts, and I want to see the balances that are in student life balancing unit hierarchy 7. So again, I'm on the general ledger balance report if you're following along. And you'll see how this is displayed. This one's slightly more granular than the trial balance. It breaks out unique combinations of cost center, balancing unit, fund, program, revenue, spend cat. So the beginning balance as of January is in the first column. The activity of January is in the second column, and where the ending balance for January is in the third and final column. So that's probably the best spot. The other possibility, Eric, is using the university balancing unit balance sheet, which can be run for your balancing unit or balancing unit hierarchy, which you would ultimately get to the same view. It would just be a bigger picture report, and then you would drill appropriately. And then, as with a lot of these reports, you can drill into the balances directly to see the journal line. So if I click on, for example, this activity, I'm going to open up every detailed journal line. That's oftentimes maybe not the best point of entry, because you can see I have 114 items, but instead I can view by and summarize the data like a pivot table. I'm doing that by fund here. You could do this of, by essentially about any work tag that might be appropriate to what you're actually looking at here. So I won't go too much further with that, but that's essentially the short answer to that question. Question from Chris, is there a way to email or send reports to users within the Workday system without external download? Jen, I want to make sure I'm answering this
We
correctly.
do not, yeah,
believe
and
so.
I did answer that in the chat, Chris. We do not have that functionality right now. Unfortunately, you would have to either download it to Excel. I think there's also the option of PDF to download it and have that be emailed.
Thank you, Jen, for helping with that.
Sure.
The other thing that we are expressing to folks too is if you're ever maybe on the phone, I know the uniqueness of working from home with a new system, sharing information, the export and send is fine. Also, I'm a big proponent of saying like, hey, John, here's how I ran this report. Take a look at this balance and let me know your thoughts. Taking screenshots of how you ran the details of it, and the user on the other end of the phone should, be able to recreate it. So, we talk about, saying, here's how I ran it, see this criteria for yourself, is one thing that we've talked about too. Jim's question, what is the difference between a general ledger balance report and a general fund balance report? Great question. So the most direct way to answer that question, the general ledger balance report is a trial balance type of view that breaks out balances by ledger account. Okay. And I'll bring up the general fund balance in a separate tab and explain that the general fund balance report is not any kind of breakdown by ledger account. It is a summarized view of your what you might call your cash carry forward, what I would call your equity balance by unique combination. So general ledger is ledger account, detailed view. General fund is a summarized cash carry forward by FDM combination. If I could summarize that in a couple words, that's how I would do it. And I'll demonstrate it here.
And I think with also, I responded, the general fund balance is a copy of the general ledger because we also did add in several more work tags. I believe like assignee, there was a lot more detail as well.
On the general fund balance?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yep. Good call out. So I'll run this report just like I ran the general ledger, and maybe it will help pull some of those differences out for your views as well. And again, feel free to follow along. So again, this is summarizing on income statement. So it's essentially kind of a neat view of, for everything in student life, BLH 7, balancing unit hierarchy 7, it's summarizing by unique intersection of FDM, sort of the net impact of the income statement. So all of your sources minus your uses summarized at a unique combination. So I really think this is a great report, and I think it's going to answer many different questions for folks. Like I saw a question in the chat already. How do I see my balances by fund? I assume that's kind of a question in terms of PeopleSoft fund. It's not that simple in Workday in terms there are funds in PeopleSoft became many different dimensions in Workday. So it's all a matter of understanding if you have a fund number, what did that truly translate to? And then once you understand what it translated to, you could run a report like the general fund balance to get yourself a view like that. So this is something good to explain too if you're following my screen. This box sometimes comes up when you run a large report with a lot of data. It will kind of be spinning for a few seconds. You can select the notify me later option. And what that does is it has the report run in the background. And when it's complete, it will notify you, and you can, choose to have it, spit out into Excel. You can sometimes wait maybe 30 seconds or a minute and it'll finish like it just did. So I would be patient with it. If it runs for about a minute, Workday will tell you it's not worth waiting. We'll run this and download it. So you can see this is about 5,000 lines. So I probably entered too large of a search, but just for example, again, I've got them kind of side by side here. The general ledger balance report is, and I narrowed this one quite a bit to look at specific ledger accounts, maybe more of a balance sheet report type of view. And then this one, again, balancing unit, cost center, fund, program, project, grant, gift, activity and event, and assignee. Well, this one now does have, this might be a recent change, Jen. The ledger account is a new function here.
Huh. Yeah, I think we did add that one in recently. I know we are still looking at this. Jimmy brought up a good point yesterday. I think I addressed that in the chat as well with the encumbrances, is not pulling in payroll at this time. There is an object that we are working on. So we do have a bug, and we are working through that with our report developer.
Great.
Jen, quick question on that general funds balance. Are we also trying to get payroll detail enabled on this? Do we know this doesn't show any liability information, correct?
I did ask that question. I haven't gotten a response yet in regards to it, so I don't think it does. But when we
What was
do
the
have
question?
more, if it
Does
has
this report
liability.
doesn't show liabilities, right, Patrick? It's just
Well, it depends
it's
on
an
what you
income
filter.
statement. Sorry,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yep. Gene had a question about the icon to the right of the chart icon. I'm assuming I'm not sure which one. If you're talking, Gene, about the preferences I showed earlier, not all reports have the ability to do that. So this report being a custom, sort of larger custom build that joins a lot of different data, you don't have the ability to add or subtract columns like you did in the fine journal lines. If that's the essence of your question, some reports have the ability to do it while others do not. The more complex matrix reports that join a lot of data, you can't touch the columns because they're so intricate. But the fine journal lines you can. Hopefully that answered the question you were asking. Yeah, from Frank, a question about the ability to see inactive cost centers, funds, and programs. The other reports that we've been looking at a lot is the FDM report. So if you type in cost center, for example, and just let the return come, you could look at FDM values, and you'd be able to see all the cost centers maybe that you're looking for and more. So you can filter on this report, and if a cost center is inactive, I believe it always has the word inactive in the cost center name. I don't think Tiffany's here, but Jen, you probably know that as well.
I am here, Patrick. That is correct.
Okay, thank you. And there's also a field here that says inactive, yes.
Yep. And if you wanted to run this and if you didn't want to see the inactive values, there is a prompt that allows you to exclude inactive when running too.
Yeah, and I didn't select that. I didn't decide to exclude the inactive, so I have them here. There's, so you can see them here. And these FDM value reports are really great across the spectrum. So there's a report for essentially each work tag almost. So program, you can see, fund, cost center, balancing unit, all of them. So.
Yeah, and I'm sure some of you are probably wondering, is it possible to be able to pull when pulling these reports, to pull by, let's say, the hierarchy levels? Unfortunately, it's not. That's why there's not prompt options, because of how the report's built, and we had to use calculated fields. So there's no way to get a prompt if you just wanted to pull, for instance, your CCH 6 level. There's no way for us to add that type of prompt to this report.
See here, falling behind the chat a little bit. There's a question from Gene about the budget information. So I don't know if anyone's on the phone from FP&A, feel free to jump in, but I'll give you the notes that I don't know, Eileen, if we've circulated yet or if we have a plan to, but essentially we did get a detailed kind of response from FP&A because these questions had come up this week in the previous meetings, that plans have been loaded at the unit level based on templates provided to FP&A back in July, and the plans are viewable in the sources and uses variance report that we often demo in these sessions. And it's you need to run it at the CCH6 level, or for units reporting to academic affairs, it would be at CCH7 level. And the data itself is loaded to an administration cost center for each unit. But it resembles the plan for the entire unit. So it's not currently down at the granular cost center level in Workday. There is going to be the option to enter a spring forecast as well, which can and will be entered at a fund cost center balancing unit level at a minimum, but could also include more granular work tags such as program, activities and events area, or assignee. An Excel template will be provided to SFOs later this week, and the FY22 planning cycle will begin in early March and will also be performed at the more granular level. So just wanted to share that. I know there's been a variety of different questions related to plans, so hopefully that helps answer that question. Well, I thought we had a lot of people in the previous meetings, Eileen. Now we have over 100, it looks like. This is fantastic.
I know this is a record for this week. So don't let that stop you from asking questions, though.
Yeah, definitely.
Speaking up if you need us.
Yeah, there's a question about being able to see every transaction that converted in and posted in January to a specific fund. Which is the best report to run? So if you're, it's a good question. So again, the idea of running it by a specific fund is not really going to be a meaningful exercise in Workday, because fund has a lot different meaning than it used to in PeopleSoft. So I would give the advice of running either the general fund balance report or the general ledger balance report, and that would give you a good idea at your maybe your cost center hierarchy or balancing unit hierarchy, a good split out. The other option, maybe even better, is sources and uses, and you just have to make sure you're using the right filtering. Again, if you're looking at a specific cost center or a cost center hierarchy, and the sources and uses are going to give you, you can run it for a year-to-date number. Haven't been in this one yet today. Typically, we're having people run this for a current period year-to-date, which means just like you'd think it would, all data through of 21, including up to January. And I think, Peggy, for your question, the beginning equity number is going to be kind of important. What this means is, what was your cash carry forward at the end of FY20? So this would be a huge sort of summarization of that, this 8.4 million in the case of optometry CCH6. And then you could use the view by features that we've been talking about, where you might want to say, okay, what carried forward by cost center? And you could also then say, give me cost center and fund, maybe would be valuable. And you can see a breakout. It says, what was my carry forward from FY20 end into FY21? And you can kind of get a table breakout here to see individual cost center broken out by fund, where we stand. And that would give you a good summary of where things came in from GL conversion and where the balances live. Question, Melissa, what was the balancing unit report mentioned? I can go pivot over to that. I was referring to a balance sheet report. So university. So I've just typed in UnivBal, and you can see it's my first return here, university balancing unit balance sheet. And the idea here is, with our guidelines, in terms of, what's the new reconciliation practice? We often talk about the balance sheet, and for units that are looking at substantiating and documenting, what does their balance sheet look like? What are their balances in inventory or accounts receivable? This might be a report that helps to substantiate. So again, I'm really loving to pick on optometry. Update this for January. So this is sort of a summarized view using balance sheet ledger account summaries. So Again, it's sort of in the neighborhood of the sources and uses, but specific to a balance sheet. So you can kind of see it neatly here on one page where the ledger account summaries are cataloged down the columns, starting with assets. So using the expansion buttons, I can open up the tree, if you will, and I might be of particular interest to accounts receivable. I can then get down to the account level, and I can see what is my AR balance. And then again, the same view by function. I maybe want to look at it by balancing unit to get my bearings of what is my balance made up of. But the idea behind this report is for reconciliation purposes that your balance sheet accounts, whether it be assets or liabilities, are substantiated to perhaps an outside source system like optometry's AR system maybe. I know that's relevant to our clinical operations, but others of you may have inventory. You may have some other accrued liabilities that you have interest in analyzing or reconciling to. So this is again the university balancing unit balance sheet that gives you specific view on the balance sheet. See where we're at here. Next question from Lisa W. Does the beginning balance in the general ledger balance report represent the previous month or year to date? That's a good question. So I think I lost my tab. I need to have all three open probably at any given time. But the beginning balance would represent the beginning balance for the month in which you ran it. So if you ran it for January, it would be the beginning balance rolling into January, Lisa. Christina, if you're still on, I think Kamal entered a question in the chat.
Yeah, I think Patrick, have you shown them like the future reconciliation model and how, I think we did, like how we're looking at like month to month and comparing that and then drilling into variances. We don't have an exact replica of the HRB 130 because we're kind of hoping that you are looking month to month for your variances and investigating those. The fine journal line OSU payroll detail does have all the information that you would have extracted from the HRB 130 or 140, but you would need to, if you wanted it to look exactly the same, you'd need to actually pivot that out to get it that view that you're looking for. But do you want to show them real quick, Patrick, what like the new concept of month-end review activities looks like?
Yeah. Yep. I'll feel free to chime in, but I'll go through it, Christina. Sure. So what Christina's describing is the idea that, and we talked about this in Monday's cost center manager briefing, if you or your team was able to be there, we're really trying to move people away from the line by line transaction verification activities that happen. And I know that's easier said than done, but our focus really and the way these reports have been built is to try to steer and facilitate more of a variance analysis exercise. So I'll give you a good example here on salaries. Knowing that salaries is such a large component of every unit's cost structure, obviously, if you open up salaries on the sources and uses here, so if you missed it, what I just did is I just kind of expanded down through uses until I was able to see it at the category level that I'm desiring. So you can see at first uses is separated by these buckets, and then I go into uses itself. And then I see these very meaningful categories: salaries, benefits, fee auth, student aid, supplies and services, capital expenditures. So this can be done in all of those categories, but the way we've been looking at it for salaries, I think, is really a great example by period. Forgive me, ledger account and then by period. So if we go by ledger account and then by period, which means like the month, accounting month, this is a good example of how the variance analysis could be executed and what would be meaningful is to look across these In this salary case, it's broken up in about 17 different ways across the salary spectrum in terms of your type of pay. And you're able to see really a nicely year-to-date trailing, in this case, 7-month trailing history of, maybe this looks really high compared to previous months. Why has this number gone up? Why has this number dramatically gone down? So the trending and analysis to help identify if there are issues in maybe how people are costed, or maybe there was new FTE added, or whatever the case may be. And then Christina, you showed in the past, I think I'm logged in as myself, so I probably won't be able to see it like you would hope, but I think previously we had gone in by position. Yeah, see my security. I need to get in as.
I need to get you that security, Patrick.
I need to get in as. Sorry about that.
And to view payroll detail, this is a good example. If you can't see payroll detail in the general ledger, the security role is called Payroll Accounting Adjustments Analyst. That is a security role that would allow you to see like employee names and position numbers in the general ledger. And then Christopher McGowan just had a question. So we're looking at the variance analysis. Yeah, you're doing a high picture evaluation, but yes, there may be cases where you still definitely do need to go in to the line by line detail to understand why those variances are happening. And then Patrick can show you an example in sources and uses of how you could drill into that. Alternatively, though, you of course can run Find Journal Lines OSU payroll detail. It has all of the payroll information in there as well. But this, if you're just like looking high level, this is a good like gut check. Hey, there's something that's high here. What's going on? And you can filter by like an employee's your employee names and see, oh, this person was now on here. They weren't on here in the past. What's going on? You can kind of start doing some. And obviously, you can't do this for periods that were incurred, like payroll that was expensed prior to Workday. No, we don't have the people detail in the GL, but everything from January forward, you'll have people detail in. So Patrick's going to show right now how you could do it by maybe like a position. But you can also do it by, if you wanted to see like all your overtime, you can do that here too. You want to go position, Patrick, I think.
Yeah, I just wanted to show that worker is how you see it by individual person's name. I'm not going to do that in the demo, but.
Sure. Then these are all the positions that you're paying for. And then if you ever wanted to drill into more detail, you can kind of continue to drill in by either clicking on the amounts for the person. Like you can click on that, any of those dollar amounts, and it'll take you into all the journal lines associated with that person. This person has 3 journal lines associated with them. It would show you they were maybe split funded, or maybe they had like a vacation or sick leave time taken. But that's how you can get into that detail. And then if you get out of here, Patrick, and go back, if you just wanted to see maybe all your overtime, you can go back one more and then scroll down to like, the ledger account where your overtime maybe would sit right there. And you could do that. Yep. And then you could see all the people there. And then Lisa, do you want to respond to Jim? I'm not sure, like overall, I don't, the direction of like what the expectations is for the supporting document for review. I'm going to defer to Lisa for that one, Jim.
Sure. So, sorry. Go ahead, Patrick.
Oh, no, I was just going to tee it up for you, but go ahead. Sorry to interrupt you.
Okay. No. So I just couldn't get off mute and all that good stuff. So from a documentation perspective, in the Q&As that I believe Eileen sent out yesterday, maybe, I did add an additional column that starts documenting the type of documentation required. So what we're looking at, if it's something that you just need to review and take action on. So for example, find open journals, and find find P card expenses not expense, that type of thing. There's no documentation required. For those items, so for example, the sources and uses and other items you're supposed to review and perform an analysis on, we're asking that you document those. And depending on the report, it depends on who should be reviewing them. Document those with the sign off as well as any comments you may be making, and maintain those however you are maintaining your closing documents, whether you save that in a shared folder or you're using Box, which maybe isn't the best idea because Box is going away, that type of thing. Does that make sense, Jim?
Yes, Lisa, it does. Thank you. It's just that, you know, I always anticipate that, you know, we have to do that person by person to make sure there's no ghost employees, you know, that the right people are getting the right paid the right amounts, that, you know, now that certain payments aren't routing to the cost center manager, that what the manager put in was correct and allowable, those kind of things. So yeah, so I'm still envisioning that a person by person analysis on a monthly basis will be necessary. I hope not, but I don't see a way around that at the moment.
One thing too, Jim, that might help is if you are in the salaries and you just want to look at like overall additional payments, Patrick, if you don't mind going to the 6 million right there under salaries and clicking on the little down arrow. You can go by pay component, high level, and then this would tell you all the types of payments received to people in your area over the past, you know, accounting period. So you can see that this unit had some ad pay, some GAs, some bonuses. So this at least kind of helps you identify, and of course, the other report has the same thing as well, the fine journal lines. But this kind of quickly, if you're trying to do a quick evaluation, did John get his faculty administrative attachment? You can kind of quickly see, yep, there's an admin attachment, and then you could pivot that, or not pivot that, but drill that in a little more and see who that admin attachment is. So this is kind of a high level, quick view of what's going on. It's not exactly what you're saying, Jim, but you can get to this information as well.
True.
No,
thank you, Christina. That's helpful.
Just catching back up with the chat. There was a question from Lindsay about let me find it here. Should the general fund balance report, if we pull these for December, should they match our December 90 reports? If they aren't matching, what are the reasons? And can you explain the problem with encumbrances? So your 90, again, I apologize, I don't have all the PeopleSoft e-report numbers down. I can't remember exactly what the 90 is, but if you're looking at a ledger account by ledger account tie out for your unit, I still think the general ledger balance report is maybe what you're looking to do. The general fund balance report is a little bit summarized view by unique FDM combination, and it really the tie out exercise that we had done for GL purposes, you know, back in 2019 and in 2020. It's a really hard exercise, as many of you can attest to, because it's not just a one-for-one mapping, right? So your combinations turn into different things. Sometimes a fund becomes a balancing unit. You know, sometimes a PeopleSoft fund becomes different things. Project, balancing unit, gift, of course. So in terms of if they're not matching, sort of the reason why they don't match is sort of has to be evaluated on a one-by-one basis, unfortunately. There's no you know, perfect magical key to that. I know one of the big reasons that have thrown people that there's a difference is that when we did the GL balance conversion, we really had to pick ledger org or owner org in terms of driving the cost centers on the converted data. So if you're used to looking at things at a ledger org view, you're not going to get that in Workday, things were converted based on owner org. So, you know, there's some reasons for differences there, but it really has to kind of be looked at a one-by-one basis, if you will.
And then Lindsay, in regards to the encumbrances, there are different business objects for the reports that we pull, so different buckets of data. And there was payroll that we are looking at. I think it wasn't picked up in the report because it was a copy of another report. So our developer is looking to pull that in. So we're trying to get that fixed now.
Thank you, Jen.
Yep.
Let's see here. I think we talked a bit about the equivalent report to replicate the HRB 140 a bit there. What is the best report to see P-card transactions / reconciliations? Most comparative to the old P-card reconciliation report, which was called APU 128DW.
So Patrick, this is Lisa. I can't find the question and you read it too quick for me.
Yeah, I can restate it if it helps, Lisa.
So I think that for most part, it's, I believe, find P-card
Find credit card.
transaction. Find credit card transaction. Thank you.
I kept searching, yeah.
So that credit card not expensed, OSU, are the transactions that you're looking for those P-card transactions that have not yet been expensed.
There's another report, Jen. Find credit card charges? Is that what you said?
Find credit card transactions. Believe was another one. So the way I think about it, we're not using the word P card really necessarily. In Workday, we're saying find credit card. That's kind of how I translate it, if that helps.
And that is to get standard delivered Workday reports, because some companies have P cards, some companies have reimbursement-based personal cards. So they generically use credit card to move away from the specificity of different companies. Patrick, I'm trying to look up the name of the report.
I found another one that says find credit card transactions for worker organization assignments.
That one's not ringing a bell.
Okay. And if we need to take it offline and we can get the right person from the project team to look at that too.
But then what we're trying to show you is the credit card transactions that are not expensed, and maybe the person is looking to see a listing of all P card transactions based on card or something. So maybe Kyle, if you could add a little detail as to what data you're looking for.
Hi guys. Yeah, so at the end of every month, I should say the beginning of the following month, we just want to see what individual P cards were hit, so we can kind of, reconcile that way, look into those finer details of those credit card transactions. So we're primarily looking for ones that have hit and posted.
So posted to the ledger?
Yes, I guess so.
So you would be able to see those in the workflow. That goes back to that kind of we do have the transaction detail that would be in that fine journal lines. But that's moving away from the concept of transaction verification versus you're reviewing the transactions on the front end, so you'll see them as they process.
Okay, I gotcha.
And the source of those, I believe it's called procurement card, if I'm not mistaken. think that's what it's called. Let me just verify that. I might need to use that job aid, Jen.
We're looking at all of the same reports, though. It does
We
say,
are,
yeah.
In terms of where the P card, what source it posts to. Journal
And
source.
Patrick, it's actually the credit card transactions not expensed -OSU.
Perfect. There we go. Yep. That's this one. Thanks, Lisa. Okay, we'll keep going down the list here. Chris had a question, like on day 14, when monthly reports are available, where do we go to find those? So definitely a change in how you go to get reports. Everything that we're showing you today is sort of where you go to get the reports. There is no delivery from e-reports or anything like that anymore. At the end of the month, depending on the actual timing of when the end of the month is, and throughout the month, sort of the new ideal is that you're reviewing the reports throughout the month. You don't have to wait for a snapshot in time. All these reports are updated as transactions are posted, as transactions are approved. These reports are meant to be real time at your fingertips of each of you and your team members. And there is no wait for a publishing of a report. You go out and you seek and you find what you need, which I know is a big change, but that's really, I don't know if Jen or Lisa, you want to add anything to that, but that's how I would answer that one. Another question, is there a way to enter plan/budget info mid-year for, say, a new program or grant or award? So high-level answer to that is there is this idea of forecasts that are intermittent plans throughout the year. I know there's definitely on the radar from the FP&A team for that to occur every autumn and every spring at least. It wouldn't necessarily be ad hoc, but it would be more in those scheduled forecast moments throughout the year where, as new information becomes available, a forecast can be kind of republished as a new target when there are new potentially programs or grant awards available. Right. Desiree has a question about best for reconciling bank deposits and credit card revenue earned from an earnings unit. So talked about this a little bit earlier, Desiree, but happy to hone in on that a bit more. By reviewing, so of course, the bank reconciliation team and Treasury is ultimately responsible for the book to bank reconciliation. But if you're wanting to confirm that from your operations unit that you are getting, that you were posting the revenue that matches to the outside source system, I would recommend using the University Balancing Unit balance sheet and then using drill down within that report. Or conversely, if you want to verify revenue, I would go through the sources and uses report, going to the revenue line and confirming whether it be from a point of sale system, whether it be from credit cards, clicking in through those reports for you to be able to confirm revenue is posted completely and accurately, is how I would recommend doing that. Again, if you really want the super detailed view, you could go to the find journal lines and that would give you the most granular way to review that. But it's all about like focusing in on the ledger accounts you want to review. So if it's posting to AR or if it's posting to revenue, those are the ways in which I would recommend you going about tying that out on a daily or weekly basis. Marta asked, is there a way to save the report that you find after you do the view by drill? There is no way to save the view by drill, Marta, because it's within the actual report itself. So yeah, there's no way to actually save that port. You can save filters on a report. So at my search criteria, as you can see on my screen, you can create a filter name so that you don't have to remember all the criteria you put in. You can simply go to your filter. So if I always knew I wanted to look at this, I could come in and make a name for it and click save, and then it would be available to me down here. But in terms of the drill by view, you cannot save those. Chris asked a question. So we're looking at, sorry, I think we're behind on chat a little bit, and this might have been answered a little bit. We're looking at the variance analysis, but still might need to do line by line detail depending on those variances, yes or no? Yeah, so if you need to, again, if you need to drill into variances, you might sort of get down to that level, I think, whether that be an individual invoice, maybe you find that it was coded incorrectly, or it led to one of your variances, a spend variance, or maybe getting down to the level of payroll detail that helps explain a variance. It's just not meant to be a transactional verification necessarily, but more of a drilling in to verify information is accurate and it belongs in the right cost center or work tag location.
Yes, Patrick, you're exactly right. That concept is part of your analysis. You realized a balance is incorrect for some reason. Like Patrick said, it could be missing something. You could have, an invoice could have been paid from the incorrect chart field that needs corrected, that type of thing. That's the analysis we're hoping and expecting you guys dive in to look at. What we want to continue to move away from
I'm gonna ask Lisa, Jen, or Tiffany, if you guys are on the call, if you want to chime in on that in terms of how detailed should we get with trying to track down differences between what folks would have seen on a 90 versus the sources and uses.
Yeah, and I am you back, Judith, to see if you could be more descriptive about what kind of differences you're talking about.
Yeah, so that's really on a case-by-case basis as to what those differences are, as to whether we need to investigate them or not. And as a reminder, we did communicate out the difference between the consolidation in the owner org concept. So if you're seeing those differences, that might be driving some of those concepts. But without more detail, I don't know that we could troubleshoot. I'm not seeing anything from Judith, so maybe if you have some examples, Judith, you could email us or work with your SFO.
Eric has a question on credit card transactions not expensed to OSU. Why can't we run by cost center or department level CCH9? Looks like, I'm not super familiar with this report, but I will give it a go here. Looks like you can run it by cost center hierarchy. So depending on what CCH9 you're looking for, should be available. Looks like I was able to pull up, not sure exactly what CCH9 you're looking for, Eric, but it looks like you can in fact go at that level. It looks like you can't run it at a specific cost center level, but CCH9 is the next most granular hierarchy. It should be helpful to you.
So Eric, if you're not seeing anything, it could be that the cards are assigned based on the user's home org. So while the transactions may be charged there, the user of the card may have a different home org. You also, Eric, may not have credit card transactions that are not expensed. So getting 0 results on this report is actually a good thing. That means everybody's doing their job.
Hi, thank you very much. I didn't want to get lost in the chat here. When we run it at this level here, CCH9 food science, we'll get no results, but I could go in and run it for FAES at CCH6 and get a whole list of things. Of course, that includes everybody else in the college, but then I can filter down to my cost center and see that I do have transactions that are sitting out there. So I was just wondering where the disconnect was at this level, why it wouldn't pull them up, but at the higher level, I can filter down to find mine.
I don't know. That might be an error in the report itself. I think we'll have to take that back.
Eric, I'll take that one back.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
There's a question from Rosemary on this report as well, for credit cards not expensed. I have a transaction in the credit card transactions not expensed OSU report, but I did create an expense report for this transaction. What should I do?
So do you know the status of the expense report? Because it'll continue to show up on this report until it's through the entire process. So even if you as the card holder have expensed it, if it hasn't migrated through the entire workflow, it will still show up on this report.
I'm sorry, this is Rosemary. I'm actually looking at the expense report on that P card thing, and I'm trying to figure out where the process thing is. So,
do you have the expense report number?
I do. It's ER. Oops. 70907. It's for $36.
Status draft. Yeah, I'm not.
I don't know that it's been submitted.
Oh, there it is. I see it. Oh, well, this is the first one I did, so apparently I didn't submit it. Is that what's happened?
Yeah, it looks like it's in draft status. Yeah.
Shoot. So I go into maybe edit expense report and then I'll be able to submit it?
That should be the path, yep.
Well, I've got all the receipts. All right. Well, thank you. Now that was silly.
No problem.
No, that's exactly why we're doing this, right?
Well,
is to
Now
run
I know.
reports and find our issues.
Well, I
Because
found
how
a
else
val-
would you have known? So
I
it's
found a-
great.
Thanks.
I think we're pretty close to caught up, guys, but anyone else you can chime in if I've missed your question. Trying to keep up. Thanks, Eileen's been answering some questions and giving some resources to folks.
Hey, Patrick, it's Kevin.
Hey, Kevin.
I'm sorry my chats weren't coming through. I must have done something wrong. I'm here again today. I have a quick question. So correcting things ahead of time on work tags before they go into the general ledger or for payment, I don't have approval rules. So is there a way for someone like me to check to make sure those work tags are correct before they go forward, or would I need to have a specific approval rule prior to that, like an ad hoc rule, just to look, instead of going and seeing it later or doing journal lines and being, oh, this work tag is incorrect, now I need to do this journal or whatever.
Yeah. So the short answer, Kevin, is obviously if you're initiator of the transaction, whether it be a journal entry or an expense report, you'd have the ability, of course, if you're in the approval workflow, some business process workflows in Workday have a review step where, trying to think of a good example. I think expense report has it. Someone could correct me there. Some folks in the procurement line of the workflow have this review capability where the transaction comes to the reviewer and they can approve or they can actually edit the work tags if they see something that's not correct, and then push it forward in the workflow, similar to how some of the e-request processes worked previously. And then there are some folks that only have the approval step, which means they can't edit the transaction. That's typically, at the end of the workflow where you can just approve or deny or send back the transaction, but you don't have the ability to edit the work tag. So if a work tag needs to be edited by an approve step, an approver, it really needs to be sent back to the initiator to correct the problem. Outside of those sort of three main actors in the process, Kevin, you've got to really be in one of those roles to be able to act on the transaction and update it while it's in the workflow. Otherwise, if you found something in error at the end of the workflow, it would have to be fixed via a journal entry or an accounting adjustment.
And
Thanks,
Kevin,
Patrick. Oh, go ahead.
The
Yeah.
responsibility for ensuring the accuracy of the chart field is the cost center manager role. So as part of the role and as part of them approving the transaction, they are required to validate that the chart field is correct.
Right. So would you advise that that there be an ad hoc cost center manager or for me, or should I be a reviewer?
You would need to take that back and work with your college as to who has that role currently and are they meeting their responsibilities? Because I don't know the answer to that. But
Okay, great.
that is the expectation of the cost center manager. So whoever in your college has the cost center manager, that is their job to do.
Okay,
And
great.
no, there is no additional ad hoc roles to validate chart field because we've assigned that duty to the cost center manager.
Great. Thanks for clarifying that. I appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Kevin. I think the next question, Michelle has a question about, I assigned the expense to someone. Now I need to retrieve it back in the system. I can find it when I run the reports, but the little box which allows me to check the expense and attach the paperwork for the expense report is no longer there when I pull it up. I'm not sure we'd be able to tackle that in this session. That might need to go
Yeah,
through
I don't know that you can undo that. Once you send that off or reassign it, it drops from your work list. I don't know that there is an undo button in that situation. I believe what you can do is have whoever you assigned it to assign it back to you to get it back on your work list. But there's no other way to undo that transaction. Sorry.
The next question we have is from Donna Smith. I think this has been discussed a few different ways, maybe a bit. Has the Workday team been working with internal audit to determine the suggested reconciliation process, running reports daily, weekly, monthly to satisfy oversight requirements? Understanding minimal requirements would be helpful. I'll tee that up to you again, Lisa.
Yes, so the enterprise project team, as well as my office, have been fully engaged throughout the entire process with internal audit. They sat on our committees for supply chain, payroll, and finance. So, and they reviewed all processes. They reviewed all of our internal control documentation, and they also reviewed all policy updates. So we have definitely been working hand in hand with internal audit throughout this entire process, and we will continue to do so. So internal audit is invited to all of these meetings as well. And they're invited to any other type of programs that we offer. So we are engaged and will continue to be engaged with internal audit so we can gather their feedback real time. And I guess the second piece, I'm sorry, the suggested reconciliation process, that is the work that we have been outlining both with that memo on the controller's website, as well as some of those Q&As that you've seen, and we'll continue to refine the process. However, if you take a big picture step back, what we'll always do from a central perspective is outline, I will go with the minimum requirements. You will always need to, and this should be driven by your senior fiscal officer, look at your individual college, look at the risks in your individual college, and tailor your close process and your review processes to the risks associated with those colleges, with your individual college. I would be happy to meet with you to work through that risk assessment with you if needed. So the question was more about, are you going to put a list of reports out there and how often to run them? So yes, we have a list. However, that list may not be all inclusive of your college needs based on the special nature of your college and the businesses that you do.
Right, I think we are finally up to date with questions. Unless I missed your question, I apologize. I don't know if anyone has anything that I missed or just a question. Feel free to add it.
Yeah, it does look like we've caught up. Unless, yeah, please flag us if we haven't.
Yeah, Eric, good question. That actually takes me to a topic that we wanted to demo and discuss for everybody anyway, so thank you for that. The question is about best practice to get journals approved. So this is really important and timely question for tomorrow leading up to 5 p.m. tomorrow. This is a practice we want all of you to get accustomed to doing and practicing on a monthly basis. So the way that Workday works is that we are not able to close the books for the period of January until all journals are either approved, denied, canceled. They're in their final statuses. We can't have any journals in flight with an accounting date of January because Workday, has a validation that essentially makes you complete all accounting journal entries that are in flight before you can proceed. So we demoed this yesterday, but as a approver, or even as a journal entry initiator, you could run this Find Journals OSU report, and you could bring back journals that are maybe in flight. So I showed this to the group yesterday as well. So focusing on journals status of created error in progress for the month of January, in this case, the Ohio State University. I'm going to focus on journal sources that can come in from the units. There are so many journal sources we don't care about their status. We want to exclude them from this review. So I'm simply bringing in cost center journals and funds transfer journals. The advice I gave yesterday is you might have individual folks on your team. There might be 3, 4, 5 folks that do journal entries in your department. You could add them specifically by name as the originated by to just get down to your folks. So if you have Doris, you can multi-select your 3, 4, 5 people that you want to take a look at. For now, I'm just going to run it open. So again, January, journals, status of error in progress or created, journal sources, cost center journal, funds transfer journal. If I run this open right now, see, I have 171 journals. So we've got a lot of work to do in the next 24 hours. And you can filter and view and sort by who's the originator. So again, all of these journals really need to be looked at, as soon as possible and not left until the last moment tomorrow afternoon. Otherwise, what will have to be done in the controller's office is one by one, these will have to be pushed back to a February date, and they'll stay in their same status, but the date will be changed on all those so that we can move forward with close. So definitely appreciate you guys getting in there and making that a priority. Is it okay to save for later draft, then use for next period? So it's not actually, it's not going to solve the problem. The problem is that these have an accounting date. If you save them for later, they're still in draft status. They need to be either canceled or you need to push the accounting date to 2/1/21 or later. Otherwise, this problem will continue to exist. Question on the general ledger balance report. Ledger account 10,000 cash does not show activity, while there has been activity in other accounts. So it's not a, I can take a look at that one, Melissa, and maybe look at your specific. If you have a specific work tags that you're looking at for that for January. If you're willing to share that, I'd be happy to look. Yep, thank you. Yeah, so that's probably the issue. So cash is not going to be posting at a cost center level. It's going to be posting at a balancing unit level in most cases, if not all. So if you look at 10,000 for this cost center, you would in fact get nothing. So for this one, space and renovations, I'm going to go ahead and look at what balancing unit this sits in. So this looks like balancing unit 1103 is the balance unit that defaults in for this cost center. So again, if I run this, you will get no activity in the month of January, I'm assuming here. Yep, so that's correct. So again, cost center, the foundational reason for this is that cost center is not a balancing work tag. So what that means is that when cash transactions are recorded, whether it be deposits, whether it be payments, payroll, supplier invoice payments, or whatever, the cash impact will be hit at the balancing unit level, not the cost center level. So if I go back and I run this for balancing unit 1103, I'm assuming there's actually cash activity on this balancing unit, but that you'll see here. And you can see there are a lot of different combinations here, of course, different funds. In terms of activity, I can sort this. Sorry. You can see that there's activity in several different grants and gifts that are posting to this balancing unit of cash. But again, you'll see commonality here that none of these have a cost center attached to the cash item. So the balancing work tags in Workday are balancing unit, fund, gift, grant, and project. So when cash is posted, as well as any other balance sheet activity, they will only inherit those balancing work tags, and they will not inherit cost center. Thanks for that question. John, following up on Eric's question, is there a way to get an ISD or journal push through if there is non-response after multiple contact attempts across multiple period closures with another unit? Can we appeal to a certain central user department? In terms of having central team approve in lieu of another unit, I don't believe that's possible or feasible to do. The workflow, while some of the workflows allow for ad hocing in different folks to approve, Lisa, I think the short answer to this is it really requires that unit, because like journal entries, for example, for whatever cost center is on the journal, the cost center manager assigned is required to approve it. So there's really no way around that. I don't know if you want to add to that at all, but that's the short answer to that. How do I find record of cash sale? Go to a report here is cash sales for organization is the name of the report. And the components are similar to other things that we've shown. You have the ability to search by different components here. You might enter a work tag. I'm not sure if you have one, Layla, or not, a specific cost center that you'd like me to open up, but this is the report that you would run. Not sure if I'll get any. Yeah, gotta get a cost center that actually has some cash sales. Okay, you actually have a number itself. Very good. So if you have the number, another way to do that, if you just want to look at one individual, you can put the CS number in the search bar like I've done and execute a search. A lot of people get stuck. You're probably getting something like this, Layla, where your categories are searching on common and you're getting no results. That often trips people up. That's the default category that Workday is searching. But if you update it to all of Workday, it then appears. Again, I've showed this in a couple sessions. By going to your cloud My Account, you can change your preferences. so that by default Workday searches when you enter something in the search bar and hit enter, you can change the default to search all of Workday. So you come to change preferences, and you have the ability to say what category do I want the search to be executed on. And it's right here, search preferences, and you want the preferred search category to be all of Workday. Mine, of course, is set up that way, or I updated Doris's in Sandbox at least to have that functionality. And then you just can click on the actual hyperlink, and here you are to the cash sale. Next question is, as a cost center manager, is it correct to assume that any journal entries that require my approval will display in my inbox? Absolutely, it is a correct statement to assume that. Hopefully you're all accustomed to the inbox, but you can see as Doris here, this is obviously just a test environment, but you can see here's a journal, and then I would just, be aware of what's in your inbox and the actions that you need to take. There is the ability to sort your inbox, oldest to newest. That's a good one. Oldest on top, perhaps, that you need to go back and look at. There's a great job aid that Eileen helped us with filtering. That I think if somebody could, actually I can go to it in the ARC, unless somebody beats me to it, but finance core users, I think it is. Create, edit, and apply an inbox filter. Kind of walks you through the basics of different ways that you can filter based on process, based on user, based on cost center, that you might find helpful. So I've put that inbox filter in the chat. I think we might be caught up for the moment. I don't know if any project team members want to add. Tiffany, we showed the university spend categories yesterday as a tip for folks. That's been a common question that's come up. So Tiffany had a great tip or trick from yesterday. If you are wondering what spend category to use and sort of what you can and can't use, then you're tripping over that. This is a very useful report, the UNIV spend category FDM value report. So there's also a spend category FDM value report, which is all spend categories, but this one is specific to the university company for campus users. So go ahead and run this. Tiffany, I don't know if you want to call out some of the things you did yesterday for us, if you're available to chime in on that.
Sure, Patrick. The main thing that I wanted to point out is the spend category usage. So we get a lot of questions of why can I see the spend category when I'm maybe, doing a requisition, or, I need an expense item associated with the spend category. So there's really 4 types of usage that we can assign for a spend category. One is procurement, which means it can be used on requisitions, supplier invoices. We also have expenses. Now, if it's marked usable for expenses, it doesn't mean you can select that spend category, but it means an expense item can be created and linked to the spend category. And then we also have ad hoc payment. If the spend category usage is blank, that means it only can be used for journal entries and miscellaneous payments. So if you're having trouble seeing a spend category or think it should be selectable on a specific type of transaction, you can use the request framework in the spend category edit form to request a change in the usage of that spend category. The other thing that I wanted to mention is ledger account. So, there's that ledger account usage rules report that allows you to link a category to the ledger account. This report in hierarchy level 2 actually tells you what the ledger account is that category is linked to. It just doesn't have the number, but after univ underscore, it has the actual account name. There are some exceptions. So typically, if a spend category is open to one of the 4 usages I talked about, we always have an account posting rule built on the spend side for those. But if you think of things like some of the payroll accounts, if the payroll spend category is not open to ad hoc payment, you will not see it with a ledger account on this report. So I don't know if Christina or Andy are on, and maybe you want to share the link again to your account posting rules on the payroll side and your crosswalk. But in most cases, you're able to leverage this report to see that ledger account linkage. But when you get into things like inventory and assets and payroll, right, there are overrides that take place. So definitely not maybe the one-stop place, but a little bit easier to read than the ledger account usage report.
Thanks, Tiffany. I see a couple people responding. Thank you. I was wondering why I couldn't see this or do that, so thought that would be a good tip to share.
Yeah, and the same report exists on revenue categories. So if you wanted to look at the categories that could be used for UNIV, there's the UNIV revenue categories FDM values report. It doesn't have those usage rules, but the same tip applies when it comes to ledger account. Revenue category hierarchy 2 in that report is equivalent to your ledger account.
Thanks, Tiffany. I wanted to break up the conversation a little bit because I think people are probably growing tired of my voice a little bit. So thank you for jumping in.
This is probably that moment where we should ask everybody who's listened to your voice for the 4th day straight if they're still here.
Yeah, I know. I've lost track a little bit of. I've got a couple names still that I think I've seen each day.
Yeah.
So they're still in the running for our non-prizes, right, Eileen, that we don't have. But
Exactly.
if they make it all 4 days, they're brave.
No, I think I have a few like Workday Frisbees still.
Yeah, you should be in a raffle if you make it through all these.
Frisbee. How about that? The first,
Yeah.
You'll be entered in a drawing for the 2 that I have.
Yeah. Yep, Jim, you're on the list. That's for sure. I think Kevin's been here. There's probably about a dozen at least. So guys are.
We're never tired from you, Patrick and Mark.
Thanks,
You're great.
Kevin.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Yep. Let's see here. What other tricks do we have in our sleeves? We've shown this a lot, but I'll just come back to it in case you've missed it. The ability to change your preferences on a report that you can save personally. There might be a number of fields. We try to build these, especially these detailed reports, like to really like serve everyone's purpose. So a lot of times they get quite large. So you might find that there are columns you don't like either that they're there at all, or you don't like where they're at. So again, I'm unchecking a couple that maybe you don't care about. And then you also have the ability, you also have the ability to drag columns in locations that better suit your eyes. And you also have the ability to freeze the left-hand column if you want. Sometimes that's helpful. So maybe you want to have journal ID, a journal number frozen over there. You can see now when you scroll to the right, you can always have the journal ID so that your eyes can stay with the correct row. I think Jen has helped us with that one. I actually learned that this week, Jen, from you. So
it's a good trick.
It's a nice freezing tip. Yep.
So I've just heard from a lot of people that the scrolling is a lot going back and forth. So I thought this was helpful.
Definitely. Yeah, and it's that little that grid preference icon. Again, it's not available on every single report because some of our reports are very, very, custom build that don't allow you to mess with the columns, but this is sort of a Workday delivered report with some OSU slight tweaks to it. So this is still available, which I think is helpful. Michelle, I could use some procurement tricks and tips if possible. Specifically payment status. Yeah, so we probably won't be able to cover procurement in all the nooks and crannies and details, but I can go a little bit into invoice and payments if that would be helpful. So a few different reports. I'll first look at just supplier invoices in general. Again, this might not be the most direct route, but I'm just going to go here today to talk about, I can go directly to payment status. So I think you said payment status. Yeah. So obviously there's a couple different statuses in play here. There's invoice status. If you're looking at the status of an invoice, obviously approved is the end of the road that you're looking to get to. In progress would mean that it's somewhere in the workflow. So it's either, pending approval or waiting for someone to finalize. Draft, obviously, they're fairly intuitive in terms of the invoice. For an invoice to be paid, it must be approved, of course. And then the next item is payment status. So the easiest ones to call out are paid and unpaid. Sometimes it's not common, but you might, on very rare occurrences, see partially paid. That would be if there is some kind of retainage situation on an invoice, perhaps. But most typically, you're going to see either it's paid or it's unpaid. And occasionally, let's just pull one up so we can have a conversation about it, show you a little bit. So the reason I could only pull Ohio State is because I'm in his Doris right now, but I'm going to go ahead and look at invoices that are paid. University, state. Try to narrow this a little bit. So I've pulled back 474 invoices that have been paid. If I go into the invoice itself, after you drill, through your report and you find these items, this is what the invoice looks like. I kind of like this because once you get to the invoice and you're looking at the detail, of course, you can see the invoice status is approved, the payment status is paid. You can see the invoice line items. You should be able to also use the document link to click to an image on OnBase that would show you the actual, if you needed to see the image, you should be able to get to the image there. I like too how we link the payment. So you can see if it was paid, you can see down here that there is a payment and the check number is right here, or in some cases the EFT number, but in this case it's the check number, the payment amount. And then you can see another status you might be interested in is reconciled versus unreconciled. Unreconciled means that the check has not been cleared through the bank yet. Reconciled means that the check has been cleared through the bank. So I like how you can look at the invoice, and if there's a payment associated with it, you may also see that in case you get a question from a vendor or someone in your department about that status. So those are a couple of tricks that I can quickly pull, Michelle, but I realize I might not be going into the full amount of detail, but those are some of the basics. The other thing that we did in the other sessions is a lot of people are wondering, what is an accounting adjustment and when do you do it? Probably not going to be able to do it as Doris, unfortunately. Oh, I can. So if an invoice is paid, but it was posted to the wrong work tags, you can come into the related action button here. And under the accounting menu item, you have the ability to adjust accounting. So in this example, we could pretend that if I go back to my lines, maybe the wrong spend category was used or the wrong cost center was used. You can use this related action icon, the three little dots. You can navigate to your accounting actions on the menu and you can either view accounting or you can adjust the accounting. And this is what, when we say the word accounting adjustment, this is what we refer to. It defaults to today's date. Accounting adjustments are actually closed for the month of January at this point, so you're unable to post this to January. You'll actually see the message here. If I try to go to January, oh, you know what? Sandbox isn't updated. Sorry. I'll go December. Yeah, bad example. Sandbox is not production. So again, down here, I think it's a nice feature where you can update the accounting details or work tags on the invoice instead of doing a manual journal entry. So you have the current spend category, and this is your opportunity to say it shouldn't be this spend category, it should be a different one. And then same thing holds true with, you know, changing the existing cost center balancing unit fund, or maybe you need to add a work tag, including an additional work tag column like assignee or activity and event. You may add that here, and it routes just like a journal entry through the cost center manager sort of approval flow. So that's what an accounting adjustment looks like, just picking up nuggets from our other sessions at this point. Go ahead and just cancel that. Let's see here. I don't know if I have any other material in stock. Eileen, Jen, Lisa, if you guys have anything to add, feel free, but
I do not. Unless we're going to take, greatest hits, things they can't stand to not see again today that they saw previously. I think we may be ready to wrap up.
Okay. I'll pause for just another few seconds, and if there's any last minute chats or anything anyone verbally wants to ask, we'll give them that final chance. And then take some bets on the number of over under participants for tomorrow. Yeah, Chris, you can go ahead if you have a quick question.
While we're doing that, it's probably worth mentioning that we're planning on doing a couple of other kinds of office hours that are, because Patrick is so good at this, dealing with more questions on like journal entry, accounting adjustments, accounting and earnings operations, that we've got some dates set up in the next couple of weeks. The first one is next Thursday, and the next one is the Wednesday after that. So we'll be providing those dates as well.
Thanks. That's a good reminder.
Sorry, Patrick.
Oh, no, I was just, Chris entered a question, but Lisa, you please go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say on top of that, and I think I see a question from Michelle in there about some procurement tips and tricks. We also have office hours for travel, P-card, asset management, and procurement. I believe those were published in Newslink from a link perspective, and they're scheduled for every Tuesday and Wednesday. They're 2 hours each.
Yeah, the dates for those are also out on the travel P-card expense site as well.
Thanks, Eileen.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Chris's question: process to submit security role assignment changes. Jen, Eileen, if you want to redirect me, but essentially that's through the ServiceNow platform. I actually had to do one earlier. Hopefully I'm going to take you to the right place if you can see my screen. Coming to the IT service desk, there is a specific entry point for access management. Show you here in a second. And I know a lot of departments have sort of a liaison that supports these types of activities. So it might be helpful to check with some contacts in your department to see if there's a go-to liaison for this. But when you come into the IT service desk self-service portal here, I go to order services, and then one of my choices is access management, and then you're going to get a list of a lot of applications. You want to scroll down to Workday. Workday production user access request. I believe that's the correct path. If any of you know differently, feel free to correct me, but I believe that's the correct path for access requests. And then you just go in and you click through the information, and you basically say who and what roles do they need to be removed or updated or changed to, and then you can put notes in there, and that should route to the access management team for action.
Patrick, thinking about procurement, there's a report that supply chain has built. It's called Spend Category Commodity Code Detail. I know a lot of people are struggling between, what spend category do I pick? The spend categories are quite different from what we had as expense accounts and PeopleSoft. But that might be a report that you guys find useful when you're trying to determine, what you're purchasing, what spend category it actually goes into. It's called Spend Category Commodity Code Detail. It is a really big report. So when you go to run it, you're probably going to have it send you a notification when it's done, because there's hundreds of commodity codes.
Looks like that what I might be getting here. So, but thank you, Tiffany. Hopefully, Chris, we got your answer.
Maybe we can show it. Maybe I'll run it, Patrick, and we can show the actual report tomorrow, because it does take a while.
No problem. Hopefully we answered your question, Chris, on the security access. Thank you. Yep. Okay, great. All right. Well, we will be here again tomorrow. Same place, same time, 10 to 12. Please get those journal entries, denied or approved as much as you can in the next 24 hours. I guess 172 is the number today, Jen. I hope for a smaller number tomorrow.
We will be very grateful if you can. Thank you.
Yeah. Hopefully that number is smaller tomorrow.
We'll be checking.
All right. Yep, exactly. All right. Well, thank you all for attending. Thanks for all the support. I'll probably forget people, but Eileen, Tiffany, Jen, Krista, Lisa, Holly, Sue, Christina, and Andy. You guys have been great, and all of the participants, great engagement and great questions. So thank you so much, and talk to you again tomorrow. Thank you.